Everyone, Alex Terrace here, back with another product review. I am a dealer, distributor, affiliate, and consultant for practitioners and wellness clinics, and everybody at home watching as well. So I've been in the hydrogen space really since the beginning, at least in the United States, for the last 10 years. I've looked at every hydrogen product as they've come out. This review is going to be on the hidden risks with hydrogen tablets, which you can see here on the screen, what that looks like. So many different companies have jumped on the bandwagon, and ever since Active H2 came out, the first brand name of the tablet that you dissolve in water and it releases hydrogen gas, ever since that came out, there's been a lot of different white labels from the same manufacturer. It's actually a couple manufacturers, but I just want to point, there's another one there too. You can find some of them on Amazon, and you can find them on different mainstream company sites like Quicksilver Scientific, Symbiotica, Body Health. A lot of people have different white labels of these things. The formulations are pretty much all identical again, because a lot of them are coming from the same source. And what is the hidden danger? Well, there's absolutely nothing dangerous with hydrogen. It's hydrogen consumption in rich water or inhalation. It's one of the better things you can do health-wise for just about anything, and it is also one of the safest known modalities. What is unsafe, though, is how these tablets have been sold, promoted, and marketed without warning, disclosing, educating about potential contraindications and risk factors associated with the high level of magnesium that would be yielded for each glass that the individual consumes. Okay, and we're going to break that down. If these companies were to market this as a hydrogen, supplement with magnesium, it's kind of obvious that, oh, that means I'm also getting magnesium in the supplement. You know what I mean? And it's also a mineral supplement, which is really what it is. It's a hydrogen plus mineral supplement, meaning magnesium is the main mineral in there. Okay. And so because there's been a lack of that disclosure and education and the focus on getting all those benefits of hydrogen from the tablets, which is a real thing, you do get a lot of benefits from the hydrogen portion. This could have been leading to a lot of different health issues out there en masse, because between all these companies, they are selling a lot of these bottles, an unfathomable amount. Okay, so statistically, when we take a look at the risk factors, potential contraindications, and then you look up the statistics of how many people fall into those categories, that definitely could have been quite a number of people that should not be doing hydrogen from the tablets. Okay, so I don't know if there's been lawsuits and things behind the scenes, or if people even know about this stuff, but maybe my video also will save some people from some various health issues or even death, and we'll take a look at that as well. So there's a condition where magnesium in your blood goes too high, and the name of that condition is a little hard to pronounce. And I will try a little bit later on. It's something like magnesemia, which basically means your serum blood level of magnesium gets critically high. So we will cover that in this video. So let's dive in. I actually have two different PowerPoints here, so I'll be kind of popping in between both of them. If you want to watch or take a look at these, I'll put them in the description box below, along with my email address of this video. And you can contact me anytime about hydrogen questions or recommendations or other modalities and protocols. So let's get into it. All right. So there actually have been studies and analysis of these hydrogen tablets, just to be clear. And they've looked at a few things, but one of the main things is just how much magnesium is in the hydrogen water that consumers are drinking. Okay, so understanding how much magnesium is in here is one of the first steps for seeing if this is going to be safe for everybody. Okay, now part of the issue is that it's really a three-step issue. One is, as I said before, there is an undisclosed exposure, right? So they're not marketing it as a hydrogen-rich water and magnesium supplement, right? It's not being marketed that way. And it doesn't have to have such a cheesy label like that per se, but at least somewhere on the directions, right? Like how many you can take per day, Is there a maximum you could take per day? All that stuff. On the label, there could also be some contraindications and warnings and all that stuff, but that doesn't really exist. And then the company's marketing it, educating about it, making videos, all that stuff, posts, things like that. Also, don't have any fine print disclaimers. Just some people watching this video are like, man, I potentially have a great legal case here, where I could go after somebody for this. And honestly, I think you should, because if you don't, and some of these companies don't kind of change this aspect of things, really a lot more people potentially could be harmed. So it is a worthwhile pursuit legally, if necessary. So cumulative intake, this is more the issue, is because people don't realize how much they're taking, then essentially is that it builds up in the body, which is good. The body needs magnesium every day, but if you take over the amount that you really need, it will build up. So again, if you're in a severe deficiency, that's a great thing. Eventually you can come back into balance. However, if you don't really know where you're at because you don't know your lab panel, you just basically have no idea where your magnesium levels are at. And I wish it was that easy, by the way, but really it's not as simple as, we know our magnesium levels. You actually have to factor in other minerals as well, because all these minerals, they have to be in balance, a very precise balance with, and that has to be tightly controlled every single day, every moment. Otherwise you will die or have health issues. So you really kind of have to know several other minerals, not just magnesium. And so if you don't really have any clue, or let's say you don't know the contraindications with medications or other health things that you have going on, the accumulation will really kind of sneak up on you, essentially completely blind. And we'll take a look at how fast that can climb for certain conditions. But people can have health issues start to show up really months down the road, and potentially even going into like the following year of taking this sort of supplement. So that's really confusing, right? Because you might start with some strange symptoms and you just don't track it back to that until it's too late. Because again, it just slowly is accumulating, or quickly, depending on the condition that you have. So as I've said, there are already there's some health risks, and we'll jump into a little bit more details beyond this here. But yeah, kidney-related things, heart-related things, medications, elderly, and we'll jump into that a little further in terms of higher risk scenarios. But even if you don't fall into these specific high-risk scenarios, there still can be health risks because of the accumulation effect. Okay, so you might be super low risk, for example, for 12 months. I'm just throwing out a random number for 12 months. But does that mean like you're going to stay low risk for the next couple of years? After that? Absolutely not. You could go into a high risk scenario. That's why this is so sketchy and tricky, essentially, because everybody's completely unconscious and blind to what's going on in their bodies, and of course completely uninformed also from the companies that are selling these products. So you could go into a situation down the road, and the issue is that hydrogen is marketed to be something you should be taking all the time, or just doing, getting every day your dosage of hydrogen. And I 100% believe that is one of the best things you can do, for sure. Hydrogen every day, awesome, right? Hydrogen all day long at specific, every 3 to 4 hours, great idea. However, again, those, if you don't put 2 and 2 together, I'm also getting a ton of magnesium every time I do that hydrogen several times a day. I want to do hydrogen the rest of my life. Okay, well, that also means you're going to be also indefinitely doing a significant amount of magnesium all the time also. You see what I'm saying? This is where the problems happen. This is where people are potentially getting harmed, possibly in a large degree, and we just don't even know that yet. So let's scroll. Why magnesium? Well, there's a specific chemical reaction that happens between a specific form of magnesium and water, and there are a few other ingredients in the tablets, and it was quite complicated to figure out how to formulate it together, because it had to release in the water in a certain way to actually produce the reaction well and yield a certain amount of concentration. That's why those other ingredients are there, because again, it was just really difficult to figure out a formulation that produces a consistent result that would then be like a therapeutic dosage. But the main active way that hydrogen is released is with a specific form of magnesium that you're not going to come by the way. You're not going to go on the market and buy that form. and I'm going to get into why. But basically, that form of magnesium mixing with water will produce, as a byproduct, this form. It turns into this form, magnesium hydroxide, and then also yields a lot of hydrogen gas. Okay. Now, how much per tablet of magnesium are you going to get? You're going to get about 75 milligrams per tablet. Okay. And when it's in your water with the hydrogen like that, and you're drinking, hydrating, etc., this is going to basically be very, very absorbable. Okay, so this is essentially a very absorbable magnesium. Now, some people may be hearing that and be like, "Oh, great! I know for a fact I need to raise my magnesium levels. I'd kill two birds with one stone." And yeah, absolutely. As long as you monitor things, then yeah, it's great, fantastic, right? Nice and convenient. But basically, because it's also so absorbable versus other magnesium forms, and you may not know this, but minerals, depending on their chelated forms, may be more or less absorbable. But most chelated forms are, and that's when basically a mineral is bound to an amino acid. Those generally on their own, if it's one chelate, is poorly absorbed for the most part. But when you're getting it in more of the form like this in water, it's more highly absorbable. So basically what I'm saying is, instead of taking like a magnesium chelated supplement, there's actually more risks potentially with too much magnesium building up in the body, because the form here is also more absorbable. So, and you can even just kind of think like logically about it. Pardon the interruption there. So the important thing to conclude in the couple studies done is 100% of the magnesium ends up in your final drinking water. There's no loss of magnesium during the reaction. And the only thing, I wish the studies had done this, but you can look up other studies out there on magnesium supplements and do a little AI research. I like Perplexity AI as a research tool. It's an app website. But basically, what has been evaluated is how absorbable or assimilable the minerals are from different, minerals in general, but magnesium is, depending on the form of magnesium. So in other words, as I made this point before, is 75 milligrams of like magnesium citrate or magnesium glycinate or whatever, right? We've all heard these different forms. Like a form like that might be a lot less absorbable than the form that ends up in the water here with the hydrogen. To the point where actually I've had a lot of customers over the years, and for the initial couple years, this was like 10 years ago, whatever it was, I had some people that I'd sold some tablets to, and enough people that I was getting feedback, from them, and definitely was getting some feedback as far as people just noticing the effects of what usually we associated with magnesium, like if you take a large amount of magnesium, and that's kind of even back then what I concluded it to be. Nowadays, there's a specific couple companies I like for magnesium that also are in a highly absorbable liquid form, and I would say that that's the same thing with those. With this current one that's super highly absorbable that I am recommending people do, people will actually feel that magnesium working, within 20 minutes. As soon as that, 20 minutes to 1 hour, they'll actually feel the magnesium because it's so absorbable and ends up in the bloodstream extremely well. So I'm just throwing that out there as, again, that's really, really just another important thing here to bring up, is the studies didn't also get into like just how readily absorbable this magnesium is by comparison to like, oh, I ate some magnesium-rich food today, right? Had some nuts and whatever, right? Okay, well, that magnesium coming from your food and your diet, that's like takes forever by comparison to absorb and to be utilized versus something like this. This is like instant almost by comparison to digesting magnesium out of food, okay? So again, that's another aspect here about why it can be a little riskier for some people with modulating balanced electrolytes is really what we're talking about here, okay? So before I move on, before the tablets came out, they were selling these magnesium sticks. You can still find them out there, but basically that's the same dilemma, just FYI. Same form of magnesium is used in those. There are some under the sink filters. There might be more than this one company called Spring Aqua, which I'm going to do a separate review video on about why I would not recommend it. But there is a RO multi-stage filter sort of system that actually impregnates magnesium, that specific form, inside of the cartridge filters to yield hydrogen. But there's some downsides of that besides just getting a lot of that magnesium. There's some performance issues and things like that. So again, there are just FYI, if you come across that company, this kind of all applies the topic of what I'm talking about right now. All right, so this was just a slide going over, how much magnesium was actually ending up in the water. This was just like how much more magnesium somebody's getting from just regular everyday tap water versus hydrogen-rich water. There are definitely, depending on the water you're drinking, what region. I will say this, since they're talking about magnesium levels in water. This does also factor into the risk. We'll get to this other slide about how you calculate the combinations of things here, and they kind of get into it right here. Is that some water sources, depending on where it's being sourced from, will basically have sometimes significantly more magnesium in it. And people just don't account for that. So they're trying to do good hydration habits, right? They might be drinking half a gallon a day or whatever it is. And the point is, most people are not like even aware, right? How much magnesium is in my water? Or if I'm drinking certain bottled water that's like high pH, right? Or electrolytes or whatever it is, or I put electrolyte mix inside my water often, things like that. People just don't pay attention to this stuff. And before you know it, like you actually could be getting a fairly large amount. So when you stack that together with then this hydrogen magnesium tablet, again, suddenly it's like, you might be taking a little bit more than you should be. And how long are you doing this? Oh, you're just doing it indefinitely for weeks and months and years? See? So it kind of sneaks up on you. And again, most people are not just consciously even recognizing, again, getting it from these other sources, like I just mentioned. All right. So let's scroll over here. And I think we're going to flip over to this other slide over here. Okay. Let's see here. And because this one just kind of like lays it out a little bit more. So magnesium hydroxide, by the way, that form that ends up in water, if you were curious about other supplements on the market and things like that use that form, it is found in milk and magnesia. Everybody's heard of that, and antacid, and that actually is a fairly good way of helping to relieve indigestions, things like that, in terms of not having a bunch of side effects, unless you're already too high in magnesium, of course. Laxatives. So there's a lot of different supplements out there that are magnesium based. You can find them at drugstores, of course. Medical contraindications, which we'll get into in a bit. Okay, right here. You can pause that and take a look if you're curious. All right. So this was the level. If you want like specific levels in the body, the electrolytes, this is technically what is considered, as you head towards the sketchiness, okay, in terms of symptomologies, things like that, and how much magnesium is in there. I looked, by the way, I was loading at one point magnesium from a really, really good absorbable mineral supplement company, which actually I'll put a link to below in the description. It's one of my favorite mineral companies. But I was actually needing more magnesium, and I was just doing like a mini loading phase with it, and I actually did get myself towards this level here in a pretty short period of time, and started to have a lot of symptoms, and then realized what I was doing. I was like, oh my god, I need to just completely stop taking magnesium for like a couple weeks here, just to get my levels back down. And and I played around, though. I will share this one other thing is, it definitely did, show me how powerful this stuff is, or how much it can accumulate and how long it takes to get rid of it. So, like, for example, I realized what was happening to me. I stopped taking it for a few days, and then I was like, okay, a few days have passed, right? I should be good, right? All right, well, let me now take, a quarter of a dose of what I was taking before, which is practically, to be honest, was like a dropper full. That's how absorbable this one form is, similar to magnesium hydroxide in water. And there was immediately, within 20 minutes, had symptoms. And that was days after not taking it and having that small of an amount in a very absorbable form. So it's like, whoa, okay. Like this, if it's in an absorbable form and it's already built up a lot in your body, like you can definitely push yourself there. It takes a while for the body to reestablish a balanced electrolyte in the bloodstream. So let's get into some of the high-risk individuals, okay, based on all kinds of different medical studies. Because again, of course, there's a lot of different studies based around electrolytes, of course, right? Because hospitals and doctors, they need to know all that stuff for several obvious reasons. So one of the high-risk groups are anybody with some levels of impaired kidney function. Kidneys are responsible for filtering and excreting not just magnesium, but many other minerals as well, including heavy metals and all kinds of stuff, really, when we get right down to it. Even mild function, take a look over this graph over here on the right-hand side. So normal kidney function, obviously still depending on the dose you're doing every day, should be able to easily manage a perfect balance and excrete as much magnesium as is required, okay? But even somebody with normal kidney function, depending on the amount of magnesium they're taking that day and every day consistently, and as that accumulates, you can find your kidneys not being able to keep up, okay? And in fact, you'll see below a medical case of somebody that died. And there's probably more than one person, but somebody that died who had normal kidney function because they were having too much magnesium. Okay, and it's not just that the magnesium builds up; it's the side effects that has on other minerals, which also accounts for some of the potential health consequences from it. So again, it's not just about the magnesium, like it's this lone problem. It's the imbalances that it creates metabolically with the other minerals. All right, so if you have a mild case of impaired kidney function, okay, this is literally the max amount, 60%. So if you took 400 milligrams total of magnesium one day, 60% of that you'd be able to easily clear. And then of course you could do the math, and this has been done in research. Day in and day out, right? If you're only clearing 60%, see what I'm saying? Imagine how quickly, if your dosage just stay the same of magnesium, imagine how quickly your serum magnesium levels could rise. So people can get themselves in trouble really fast, even if it's just mild. Now, the challenge or problem is a lot of times people aren't doing lab tests on themselves. That's number one. That's the main issue, just to see where their health of their organs and everything is at. So that's how most people are. The other thing is if you have a mild kidney impairment, you might not also notice symptoms that might be associated with more moderate or severe, okay, kidney diseases or just kidney impairments, okay? So you might not have any symptoms at this level. See how sketchy this gets? Or you might be having some mild symptoms, but over the years this stuff slowly builds up, these conditions, so you might not even really associate certain things that you've normalized or experienced as associated with impaired kidney function. So that's why it's like, okay, now I could go 20 years and not even realize I have a built-up kidney issue. You see what I'm saying? And then you don't do a specific kidney panel test or a type of blood workup, right? And again, that's how people end up in trouble. And they're like, oh, hydrogen's so good for you. And then they just jump on the bandwagon. This is where the problems begin. Okay. So here's that term I was having trouble saying before, hypermagnesemia. And we'll go into some more about the cardiac issues as well. So we all know kidneys, not so great, okay? This was just a couple different case studies, situations that happened. One was what their blood magnesium level was with chronic kidney disease. Check out this blood level right here. This person, no kidney issues, okay? Because it just depends. If you're not paying attention to how much you're taking, eventually over time, could be a problem, okay? I'd also just note too, this person's 50 years old. Pretty young. 82 is pretty old, by comparison. In other words, there's a lot more things going on in an 82-year-old body than a 50-year-old, right? Relatively. Okay. So this is kind of a little shocking, right? Even a higher level. So who knows? She might have been a 500 milligram a day person. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe 900 milligrams. A lot of times, by the way, people might be taking a large amount like that because they actually do get a reduction in other symptoms. And they're like, oh, this helps me sleep better, or I don't have as much cramping, or, I don't have as much headaches, or my nervous system is finally able to relax and I don't have as much anxiety. And it's like, okay, so 900 milligrams is my good amount, to have all these benefits. You see? See, again, that's another scenario that so many people are just self-diagnosing totally subjectively and not objectively. I don't doubt for a second people get reduction in symptoms. You know what I mean? And I don't doubt for a second somebody's getting better sleep maybe than they were before. But the issue is that people walk away from that thinking, okay, they conclude it's all good, right? That's because magnesium is helping me. It must be all good. Like as if there's no potential side effects. Maybe there is no side effects for that first week or the second week. What about week 92? Side effects then? Are you keeping track? You know, so again, it might not be an issue early on. So stuff just sneaks up on you. Okay. Well, let's talk about cardiac issues again. So it's definitely contraindicated for, and really more around, this should be clarified depending on the dose. These people that fall into these categories, they need magnesium. Okay, they definitely need it. It's a therapeutic part of healing and also even preventing various cardiovascular issues. But the problem again is how much would a person start needing to dose with, and how would that change over time if you had these conditions. Now this is a really important slide here. Let's see where my time is at. This is a very important slide because of this. Read this term right here. And I'm also going to say the term myocarditis. Now start to do some digging in your research and look at the statistics on what being injected by a certain drug, VAXX, what that can do as it pertains to myocarditis symptoms. And the statistics of how many people have myocardial damage now is off the charts. Unbelievable, really. And even in young people, younger. So this slide has now become one of the most important slides because of the sheer statistics of how many people now are dealing with something like this. Okay? And now those same people might be saying, oh, I have these symptoms, you know, from a drug. I want to do some hydrogen because that'll help. And I agree. It's probably one of the best things you can do if you have damage to certain drugs or injections. Great thing to do. I agree. But having a lot of magnesium, okay, also could be a major contraindication. You might want to be very careful. Working with magnesium, with the other minerals, is, again, an important part of the healing process from side effects from those drugs. And even certain other pharmaceuticals, like pills and stuff, deplete magnesium. So again, magnesium is very, very important and always should be worked with therapeutically, usually, in most healing protocols. But again, got to be very careful. So there's now a lot of people, young and old, that because of certain drugs, have had certain things metabolically damaged in them, and now they're all high risk. So be very wary of the hydrogen tablets if you know somebody or yourself has had certain drugs that have damaged you. Okay, mainly the injections. What does high magnesium do? Excess interferes with cardiac electrical conduction, can exacerbate existing cardiac conditions, reduce heart contractility, intervenes with, I actually forgot to look up what that is, dioxin, and other cardiac medications. Okay, here it is. Okay, patients even with mild heart conditions are at increased risk when exposed to this. So probably something to look into, like how they define mild. You know, so that could be quite a large amount of people, you know, when we factor in all the variables these days. And just people with a general certain lifestyle, right? There's just, again, a lot of risk factors depending on people's lifestyles also. Like if they just sit a lot, they sit at work, then they're sleeping, you know, most of their 24 hours, they're not moving much. These people could even also be associated with big risks to having large amounts of magnesium over time. Okay, so again, this warrants a lot of caution. There's that hard to pronounce word again. Mild toxicity. Here's the symptoms in case you're trying to self-diagnose and say, you know what, maybe I'm actually getting too much magnesium. I'm taking a magnesium supplement. I have certain foods that I like to eat that are high in magnesium. And then I'm also doing a lot of hydrogen tablets. So take a look at these symptoms here. Nausea, vomiting, dizziness, facial flushing. I feel like I'm reading symptoms for those pharmaceutical drug ads. Loss of deep tendon reflexes, drowsiness, hypotension, brachiardia. I was close to some of these, close close to some of these. I kind of had a mix of just a couple of these back and forth when I was taking way too much magnesium. Severe ones are over here. You can read those. Okay. Let's read this also. Even mild symptoms can progress rapidly to severe and potentially fatal outcomes if exposure continues. Scary. Yep. All right. So probably some of the most common side effect though that people experience early on, which is just good to know about, right? So you can kind of assess things and then go do some lab panels. And I recommend doing for minerals lab panel like blood tests, and then also hair analysis. But you really have to work with somebody very specialized with hair analysis, and there's really only a couple labs that also do the testing properly, just so you know. So diarrhea is really most common because that form of magnesium hydroxide draws waters to the intestine, causing loose stools. That said, if you have a lot of constipation and really are backed up and you really need to get yourself going and back into a better balance again, that you maintain with a good lifestyle and diet, it's a great thing to do to overload yourself. As long as you don't have those other risk factors, then it can be a good tool for relieving temporary constipation. But again, not warranted for everybody. Dehydration, also super common. So again, a lot of people don't monitor how much of one mineral they're getting or taking. So they might be crazy high in magnesium and like super low in potassium, super low in chloride and sodium, and maybe super low in calcium. It could be really anything, but look up what your main electrolyte products are, and then you can kind of take a look also at how much magnesium is in some of those electrolyte supplements. It's good to know. And again, kind of already mentioned that here, electrolyte imbalance. Also just look up symptoms of electrolyte imbalance, and you may find actually you're experiencing some of those symptoms. So do look that up as well. Cramping is also pretty common too. Yeah, just basically feeling a little weird in your gut. But yeah, any of these. So just make note of that. Maybe look up more symptoms with electrolyte imbalance too. This one's kind of tricky, by the way, because people are drinking a lot of water. They're drinking all their hydrogen tablet water too, right? A lot of magnesium. And you can see again how this exacerbates the issue. You think you're doing good things. You're getting a lot of hydrogen, getting excessive amount of magnesium, and you're like, oh, I'm feeling more and more dehydrated. I probably need to drink more water, right? But hydration is actually, unfortunately, a little more complex to really get right. It's really quite tricky. So that's not the solution. Drinking more water is not necessarily the solution. So you can again see another example of how people get in trouble. They're like, oh, I'm just starting to feel more and more dehydrated, right? It's creeping up on them. It's sneaking up on them for the first few weeks. And they're like, oh, I just need to start drinking more water. Now it's getting majorly amplified and causing further imbalances. Okay. So we already went over this. I also just want to talk about elderly patients for a second. There's a lot of things going on with them health-wise, especially past certain ages, and depending on their lifestyle, of course, also, and diet. But generally, it's much higher statistics where they really got to watch out. Hydrogen, for the older you are, the more hydrogen can help you, okay? But you do have to be very cautious with mineral supplementation. Generally, elderly people are extremely mineral deficient. They're usually dehydrated also. They go hand in hand. So they absolutely do need lots of minerals, but that has to be closely monitored, because the more deficient you are over periods of time or the more imbalanced, the more your body doesn't handle new supplementation very well. So I'll give you an example. Like when people start to take a reasonable amount of magnesium because we know they're magnesium deficient, their body has started to function in a magnesium depleted state for quite some time and become very conditioned to that. And if you give them a modest amount of, not really much of magnesium for a couple days, they might experience magnesium side effects. Again, like some of the common ones that we just read about. So it's like, oh, wait a minute. But this person definitely needs, this amount of magnesium. So, and they're already having side effects. Yeah, because their body has to take it slow. There's a lot of metabolic changes that need to happen over time to start to utilize and absorb and utilize a proper optimal amount of magnesium again. So just FYI. So just because somebody's having symptoms at a small amount, it doesn't always mean that's a bad thing. It just means, okay, this person might be super deficient and they need to take it slow, right? So they don't have as many side effects, symptoms. Now, if they keep having symptoms, obviously, over a period of time, that's not good. Again, all this stuff should be monitored, of course. Anybody on diuretics? Doctors absolutely do put people on diuretics, just FYI, for certain medical conditions. And they're like, oh, I didn't realize, that I was taking this for this health issue, and I thought that hydrogen would also help with that health issue. And I keep repeating myself, yes, it would help with that health issue, usually, but not all that excess magnesium, not when you're on that other medication, okay? Other ones there, pre-existing imbalances, but, most people don't even monitor their electrolytes, so how would they know, right? So, all right, serious drug interactions, a wide variety of, not a wide variety, but there's several major ones: cardiac medications, antibiotics, blood thinners, common ones, diabetes medications, bone medications. Now, if you are on any medications for any of these types of conditions, this is not a good enough, thorough enough slide. Make sure you do more research, okay? And specifically look up the contraindications for your specific medication that you're on, the compound, okay? You still have to do your due diligence. This is not like a perfect comprehensive list. The other thing that you want to look at is, does the medication that I'm taking, pharmaceutical, does it actually deplete magnesium? So you actually have to look at both sides. So you also want to Google and always look at the medications that I'm on. Are they also depleting any nutrients? What are those nutrients? And make sure that you are supplementing with those nutrients that are being greatly depleted by the medication, especially if you plan on taking that medication for quite a period of time. It's not like a short-term use, but it's more like a long-term prescription. You really have to watch out for deficiencies that are created long-term. So absolutely, people end up extremely magnesium deficient and have some of those common when they're basically taking a certain medication for a long period of time. Absolutely, they can. So it can actually tip things the other direction also. So just wanted to share that. So always do some due diligence. Always talk to your doctor as well. Your doctor usually doesn't know much of anything about nutrition and preventative medicine. However, they should be able to provide you some materials on contraindications, if it depletes certain nutrients, or if it puts you at risk for not taking, like you shouldn't take certain minerals or certain supplements. There are other natural supplements out there, of course, that you should not take, right, in combination with medications. So just always do your research and don't always rely on your doctor to tell you all that, because a lot of them are also just not that informed. Here's an interesting graph of just kind of how fast things relatively climb with magnesium levels in the body over time. And time goes by fast, right? You get in your routines, and then before you know it, you're like, oh man, 6 months went by, 12 months went by, right? And also people have health goals and routines that they keep up. They want to keep up, right, for years. So this is just over 12 months. Think about it. That's an extremely short period of time. If you're planning on sticking with a certain health supplement routine for years, where are these numbers going? You see what I mean? Where are they going? Do they just keep going up? You see what I'm saying? Is somebody extremely low risk first year, and then like 3 years later, they could have a major health problem? It's possible. It's possible. So you can kind of see how irresponsible these companies are being, okay? Because they'll keep promoting and sending you emails and be like, hey, don't forget to take your hydrogen tablets. Like, why aren't you doing it? Here, insert another cool celebrity or health influencer that you should be like, you lazy bum, right? You should be continuing to take it because we love, you paying for it every month. We're making millions of dollars every month, right? And it's really uncool when you look at it from that perspective. Companies are making, you really honestly, most people would not even fathom how much money companies make off just one supplement. There's companies making millions, 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 millions every single year just off hydrogen supplements, tablets, okay? And to be honest, that is actually probably more so the reason why these disclosures aren't made. Because even if somebody does a lawsuit it's going to be settled out of court privately, quietly. And if they need to give them $1 million or a few $100,000 or $2 million, if they're making, lots and lots of money, some companies will just say, whatever, doesn't matter. If we start disclosing these things up front a little bit more and educating about it and training about it, it might hurt our sales significantly. To be honest, that's normally more so the mentality. It's sad, but it's just how it is. It's not, that's how it is in the supplement industry. It's also the same, obviously, in the pharmaceutical, mainstream medical industry. All right, so I think that about wraps up. They're just kind of going over more of the case studies, and if you guys want to take a look at the slide again, I'll put the link below. Here's some stats that I did mention before. 15% of adults have kidney disease, 48% have heart disease. Here's the percentage. I got to double check when that study was performed. It could be higher now. And also, by the way, this classification, if we also included like mild kidney impairment, especially depending on how in-depth the testing is done, and there is a little bit of a conspiracy around what are considered normal in range on lab panels, and how some of these normal in range are actually not healthy signs. So if you have a more honest perspective on testing, my guess is that percentage, including mild kidney impairment, is significantly higher, which again might be a major problem if somebody's taking these tablets over 2-3 years, or maybe even that first year, okay? Because problems can happen even with somebody with no kidney impairment. Same thing for heart. How are they classifying these conditions? There's a lot, especially after those drugs came out several years ago. There's a very much larger percentage of people that have various cardiac impairment. So again, the statistics could be quite high. And again, how hydrogen is marketed is correct, that hydrogen can help all of these people. But high magnesium levels every day combined with other sources, it could be very sketchy. So what will we recommend instead of the tablets? Hydrogen inhalation, okay? And there is some pre-made water, although it's kind of inconvenient and expensive. And then electrolytic generators is using a cathode and anode and splitting the water with electricity. Those are some of the most common units on the market. The hydrogen inhalers also split the water with that, but they're separating the gases with a membrane usually that you're inhaling. I recommend that people drink hydrogen-rich water and also inhale, depending on their circumstance and what they need. If you need any recommendations on products, just send me an email. And one product that is going to be your best, lowest cost alternative to the tablets is this. This is currently the most advanced generation of hydrogen generating water bottle, and that splits the water that you put in there, and it yields an extremely high amount, up to 8 parts per million, a little over 8, all third-party certificate validated in terms of the levels. And there's some other fun functions on this. I'll put a link also below in the description. That is actually my personal link where you can order from. And if you do your math calculation in terms of what the cost is for tablets every day, if you do it a few times a day over the course of 12 months, and if you calculate this cost, which stays the same over 12 months, you'll realize that getting hydrogen dosages a few times a day is extremely expensive by comparison. Even if the bottle is only $30 or $45 or whatever it is per bottle, based on doing hydrogen at least 2 to 3 to 4 times a day, which is a great thing to do if you can do it, it adds up to a tremendous amount of money to go with the tablets. So this bottle will last you also several years. So when you start to do the calculations on how much money that is over time, it's kind of ridiculous. So if you like spending a fortune on hydrogen water, then the tablets, they're available. But I'd always recommend, and it doesn't have to be this particular model or product, but I always recommend, you'll have way more savings. And you won't have to worry about monitoring magnesium with this because it's splitting the water. So if you want somebody that you care about to get better health-wise with hydrogen, and you don't have to want to be concerned about are they getting too much magnesium, this is basically what you should recommend them: splitting water and then drinking the hydrogen-rich water. If anybody has any questions about my long video, feel free to leave that below in the comments. And again, I do respond to emails very promptly, so you can always contact me anytime.